Good morning, students. Last time we have discussed about what is reproduction and why it is necessary for the life. Okay. Now, the second part of the chapter first is about reproduction and its parts. Okay. So let's continue the chapter. So, as you know, reproduction. What is it meaning? Reproduction is defined as a पर इसको highlight कर लेते हैं. Okay, so it is clear from this definition that reproduction is defined as a biological process in which an organism gives rise to young ones or offspring similar to itself. Okay, so this is the definition of reproduction. Reproduction is that process in which an organism produce its offspring similar to itself. ओके, सो रिप्रोडक्शन एक ऐसा प्रोसेस है जिससे एक ऑर्गेनिज्म क्या है वो अपने ही जैसे ऑर्गेनिज्म को यानी कि दूसरे ऑफस्प्रिंग को अपने ही जैसे ऑफस्प्रिंग को प्रोड्यूस करता है. ठीक है, रिप्रोडक्शन की लिटरली मीन्स यू नो कि व्हाट इज री मीन्स अगेन. ओके, री वर्ड इज अ प्रीफिक्स. इट इज यूज्ड इन many words. Okay, so re means again. Yes, you know re means again and production means yes to produce, पैदा करना. सो बार बार, ठीक है, बार बार एक ही चीज को करना, बार बार एक ही चीज को एक ही प्रोसेस को करना यानी कि बार बार पैदा करना, जनरेशन आफ्टर जनरेशन, जनरेशन आफ्टर जनरेशन. सो दिस इज द नोन एज रिप्रोडक्शन. ठीक है, बार बार प्रोड्यूस करना. अगर बार बार प्रोड्यूस नहीं होगा तो व्हाट विल हैपन? The species will extinct. We cannot see that a particular species again. So that's why reproduction is a necessary process. Okay, so let's move on. The offspring grow, mature and in turn produce न्यू ऑफस्प्रिंग. ठीक है, तो इसमें क्या कर रहा है कि रिप्रोडक्शन के बाद क्या हुआ, एक ऑफस्प्रिंग ने एक एन ऑर्गेनिज्म रिप्रोड्यूस एन ऑफस्प्रिंग एंड दिस ऑफस्प्रिंग which is produced by a first offspring, first organism. ठीक है, पहले ऑर्गेनिजम्स ने ऑफस्प्रिंग को प्रोड्यूस किया. देन दिस ऑफस्प्रिंग क्या लिखा है कि इट्स ग्रो, इट विल मैच्योर एंड इन टर्न प्रोड्यूस न्यू ऑफस्प्रिंग. तो जो पहला वाला ऑफस्प्रिंग था उसने क्या करेगा, वो बड़ा होगा, मैच्योर होगा, देन आफ्टर दैट इट विल आल्सो प्रोड्यूस न्यू ऑफस्प्रिंग, वो भी नया ऑफस्प्रिंग प्रोड्यूस करेगा. सो जनरेशन आफ्टर जनरेशन, दिस इज द होल प्रोसेस कि अगेन एंड अगेन. ओके, सो देयर इज अ साइकिल ऑफ बर्थ, ग्रोथ एंड डेथ. तो ये एक साइकिल बन गया कि भाई एक ऑर्गेनिज्म है, उसने क्या किया, वो बड़ा हुआ, ठीक है, बर्थ, ठीक है, जन्म हुई, ग्रोथ हुई, देन डेथ. बट बिफोर द डेथ यहाँ पे क्या करेगा, एक नया ऑर्गेनिज्म प्रोड्यूस करेगा, उसकी बर्थ होगी, देन ग्रोथ, देन डेथ. तो दिस इज द होल साइकिल. ठीक है, ये साइकिल इस तरह से चलता रहेगा. ओके, चलिए इसको इरेज कर देते हैं. नेक्स्ट इज कि यू विल स्टडी लेटर इन चैप्टर. ओके, बाद में जो कुछ चीज़ें हैं कि व्हाट इज द इनहेरिटेंस एंड वेरिएशन, कैसे जो है जो जीन्स होते हैं जैसे कैरेक्टर्स जो हैं वो आपके किस तरह मूव ऑन करेंगे इन नेक्स्ट जनरेशन. सो वी विल डिस्कस अबाउट इन चैप्टर 5. ओके, सो देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन कि व्हाट इज द मोड ऑफ रिप्रोडक्शन. You know कि there are so many organisms. Okay, diversity, we see the diversity in living organisms. So they are different in their structure, in their morphology, in their function, in their habitat. बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जिससे organisms are different from each other. ठीक है, अब यहाँ पे the question is कि how they reproduce, what the mode of reproduction they take, they adopt to reproduce themselves. So on the basis of their based on their participation. Okay, so यहाँ पे क्या है कि based on whether there is participation of one organism or two in the process of reproduction, it is of two types. तो यहाँ पे क्या कर दिया है कि organisms के पार्टिसिपेशन के बेस पे कि एक ही ऑर्गेनिज्म रिप्रोड्यूस कर रहा है, आप खुद से ही अपने जैसे ऑफस्प्रिंग को रिप्रोड्यूस कर रहा है, या फिर दे वांट टू हेल्प द सेम ऑर्गेनिजम्स इन देयर स्पीसीज, दूसरे ऑर्गेनिजम्स की हेल्प चाहिए, ऐसा है, देन ऑन दिस बेसिस द रिप्रोडक्शन इज ऑफ टू टाइप्स. You know very well what is? Based on their participation of one organism or to the two in the process of reproduction, it is of two types. It is very clear. That is किससे होगा, ठीक है. So the reproduction is two types. Obviously, asexual reproduction, okay. Next is sexual reproduction. How can you define this? How can you define this? Very well. Asexual, in which only one organism is involved in the process of reproduction, or the organisms produce offspring by its own, or there is no involvement of gametes, there is no involvement of two organisms. Okay, so asexual means कि without the participation of gametes. Okay, without the participation of gametes. तो यहाँ हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, no gametes. If no gametes, then obviously without the two organism, only one organism is sufficient for this reproduction. Okay, second is sexual reproduction. It very clear, it is in the involvement of two organism. Okay, there is involvement of gametes, ठीक है, male and female. What is the example of asexual reproduction? Mostly it is called as the primitive and simpler type of reproduction. Asexual reproduction is called as primitive and simpler type of reproduction because only unicellular organisms and some lower organisms involved in reproduce by this process of reproduction. Okay, all the unicellular organisms, protozoans, very clear, protozoans, amoeba, paramecium, euglena, all the protozoans, unicellular organisms, bacteria, and some unicellular alga, some unicellular fungi. Okay, they all are reproduces by asexual reproduction. And the sexual reproduction, okay, higher invertebrates and vertebrates reproduces by sexual reproduction. Okay, higher invertebrates and vertebrates, all the organisms reproduces by sexual reproduction. Okay, so we are talking about the living organisms, so also in plants. Okay, plants also reproduces by sexual reproduction, yes, as well as asexual reproduction. Okay, the question is how plants reproduce by sexually and how reproduce by asexually. Okay, you have learned in your class 10th about vegetative propagation in plants. Okay, so vegetative propagation in plants is in itself as a asexual reproduction because there is no involvement of the other plants or the two gametes or two plants. If the new plants grow, okay, or produced by the parts of the plant, by the old parts of the plant, this is termed as a vegetative propagation. Okay, but it is comes under the category of asexual reproduction. Okay, it is also called the vegetative propagation and is asexual reproduction. Okay, and sexual reproduction by flowers. Flowers has both male and female parts. The male parts produces pollen grain and the female parts forms egg. And by the process of pollination, the pollen grain reached to the egg, and there the fertilization occurs and the zygote is formed, and after that the zygote grows, mature and develop. It develops into seed. Yes, so the fruits which we eat, which we take, is the product by the sexual reproduction of an organism. Sexual reproduction by plants. Okay, let's. So it is clear. Okay, so there is a in broad what is asexual reproduction. Okay, so there is a two main category of sexual reproduction. Okay, so you can say asexual reproduction, no involvement of gametes, and sexual reproduction, involvement of gamete, and there is involvement of two organisms, obviously. Okay, okay, now there is the categories. There is more categories under the asexual reproduction. Yes, more categories of asexual reproduction. Okay, so the organisms, the lower organisms or unicellular organisms reproduces by the many ways in asexual reproduction. Yes, so in this method a single individual is capable of reproducing offspring. Yes, so asexual reproduction क्या है? Only one parent or a single individual is capable of producing offspring. Okay, as a result, the offspring that are produced are not only identical to another but are also exact copy of their parent. Okay, so in this process, the organism which is produced is identical to their parent but also the exact copy, that is the Xerox copy. Okay, how this Xerox copy the process happen. Okay, this lecture will be long, so the next part, so to watch the next part, continue watch the video. Okay, so how we can say the organisms which is reproduced by asexual reproduction is identical and the exact copy of their parent. Okay, let's take the example of amoeba. Okay, this is amoeba. This is amoeba, a unicellular organism. Okay, the organism matures. Okay, then it grows in size, and its nucleus, this is the nucleus. Okay, nucleus grow and divide. Yes, in this process nucleus is divide. That means कि the organism is divide itself. Yes, in the process of reproduction the organism divide itself. Okay, अपने आप को ही divide कर देता है. Next, this forms, the cells form a furrows. Then after that it forms two cells, two daughter cells, two amoeba cells, and divide the same content to their daughter cells. This nucleus divide is this daughter cell, and this nucleus is dividing then in that daughter cells. Okay, so in this process we can say that this two daughter cell, these two daughter cells are the exact copy of the amoeba, this amoeba, because the same content and same size. Okay, okay, if there is a copy of genetic material, okay, there is the copying of genetic material. Yes, there's the nucleus is doubling, double हो रहा है, then there is a copy of genetic material. Exact same content जो इसमें है, इस वाले सेल में है, वो आपका इससे दूसरी सेल बना के उसके अंदर वो मूव कर देगा सेम जेनेटिक कंटेंट. सो वी कैन से कि इज द एग्जैक्ट कॉपी एंड आइडेंटिकल. जैसा पेरेंट दिखता है वैसे कहीं कोई फर्क नहीं है, जैसा सेल में है वैसे ही इसकी भी सेल थी सेम है, बिकॉज अमीबा यू नो कि इज इरेगुलर इन शेप. सो इसका कोई फिक्स्ड शेप नहीं है बट सेम अपने पेरेंट की तरह दिखेगा. ओके, एंड देयर इज ऑल्सो फैक्ट दैट कि first we see the different ways of asexual reproduction in asexual reproduction. Okay, so there is so many ways, बहुत अलग अलग तरीके हैं रिप्रोडक्शन के.